The series begins in 1920 in Lahore, Pakistan, which is under British rule, protected by Nawabs and dominated by the courtesans. In the city, there is a designated area for brothels named Hira Mandi. We learn that the most famous house there is the Palace Shahi Mahal and its attached dormitory. The events start with the lady of the palace as she goes to take her nephew from his mother while she is sleeping and hands him over to the personal guard of one of the wealthy Nawabs. After that, the mother wakes up and is surprised to find her son not beside her. She runs around frantically looking for him. A servant in the palace tells her that her son is with her sister. As soon as the mother confronts her sister about her son, the sister tells her that they have made a lot of money thanks to the Nawabs. She asks her to go and remove the anklets on her feet. However, the mother insists on knowing where her son is. Shockingly, her sister reveals that she sold him to one of the childless Nawabs, arguing that he will live a better life than growing up among them and becoming an addict or a pimp. She shows her the contract she received in exchange for her son, causing the mother to collapse and beg her sister to fear God. However, the sister yells at her, reminding her that they are in the Shahi Mahal and that she is the goddess of the palace. The mother then threatens her, saying that the day will come when she will take everything she boasts about and leaves her. 25 years later, we find out that the mother has indeed fulfilled her threat and has become the lady of the palace. We see her gathering the girls around her, drawing henna. One of the girls tells her she will write the name of the Nawab Zulfikar with the henna, revealing that the mother has become his favorite. Suddenly, a servant enters and informs the mother that one of the Englishmen wants to meet her and informs her that he has modern devices with him. The mother orders her girls to help her get ready to meet him. Indeed, the palace's Aga, who is called Ustad, brings along an English officer who introduces to the mother a gramophone and a record, telling her that this machine will sing for her. He also tells her that she can record the girls' songs and make them famous, having their songs in every home. However, the mother dislikes this idea, saying that they do not want to enter every home and that nobles should come to them to listen. She refuses to buy the gramophone from him, telling him that they perform their art for art connoisseurs, not for traders. At night, the mother's daughter, whose name is Bebu, performs her show. We learn that she is the favorite of a Nawab named Wali, who attends the show, watches her, and gives her money. At the same time, the mother is with a man who is very drunk. She tells him that he has taken a new title that they should celebrate. However, he tells her that the English can't buy his loyalty with a title. The mother mocks him, telling him that he has already sold his loyalty to them. The man believes that if the English leave India, it will be destroyed, as people will kill each other. This upsets the mother, who points out that the English have already divided them. He responds by saying that they are no different from her and her daughters because they too divide a man from his wife. While her daughter's performance ends, the mother returns home and asks her sister about the money paid by a man. However, her sister explains that he didn't pay much and that his fortune is diminishing. Mother doesn't believe her and accuses her of theft, asking one of her assistants to search her. They do so, but find no money on her. The mother then asks them to search her sister's underwear, humiliating her. The sister breaks down, blames her for stripping her of her clothes, leaves, and keeps screaming that she is not a thief. However, we discover that she indeed is a thief and had hidden the stolen money in a flower vase. The next day, one of the mother's assistants asks a servant to get the mother's daughter ready and tells her that her mother wants to meet her. We learn that the daughter wants to be a poet, contrary to her mother's wish for her to become a courtesan and the lady of the palace after her. At the same time, the daughter is in her room, engrossed in the poems she loves, reading from a book by a poet named Niazi. However, a servant enters her room, urging her to get ready quickly and tries to take the poetry book from her. Unfortunately, she accidentally cuts the daughter's pearl necklace, fearing what the mother will do to her. Later, we see the daughter in front of her mother, handing her the pearls she has collected and confesses that she was the one who cut the necklace. However, the mother asks her about the number of pearls. When she finds out they are 100, tells her she remembers there being 101 and demands the missing pearl. The daughter tries to explain that it might have fallen in the swimming pool and that one pearl isn't significant. However, mother deals harshly with her, throwing the rest of the pearls at her, says she will sell the servant in exchange for the missing pearl's value. At night, the daughter decides to dive into the swimming pool to look for the pearl, finds it, and goes to her mother's room. Her mother, drunk, tells her that this will teach her a lesson and make her understand the value of her possessions. However, the daughter's focus remains on the servant. The mother changes the topic, telling her that she has grown up and they should throw a debut party to select a lover for her. The daughter refuses, saying she doesn't want to be a courtesan, but her mother completely ignores her and insists it is her fate. After the daughter leaves, the mother takes the pearl and puts it in her drink, swallowing it. At the same time, spring celebrations are approaching, and the mother announces her daughter's debut, who is saddened by her fate. One of the courtesans, surprised by the daughter's sadness, is told that she wants to be a poet, not a courtesan. Upon hearing this, the courtesan laughs and tells her that they live in golden cages, and this is their reality. But the daughter decides to fight against her fate and leaves them. The courtesan talks about her lover and tells another courtesan that she too will be free soon. The other courtesan wonders if her lover will marry her, and the courtesan confirms that he has promised to do so. She prays for the daughter to also find a devoted nobleman who will marry her. Meanwhile, we see a young nobleman at a party his family is throwing to celebrate his return from England. We learn that he is his mother's orphan and is very close to his grandmother. Upon seeing him, his grandmother tells him that it is time for him to go to the courtesan quarters to learn how to respect women, the arts of love. However, he tells her that he doesn't like that place, and that the day he falls in love, all of Lahore will talk about his love story. He then leaves to greet his father, who boasts that his son has returned from London after completing his law degree. However, the son corrects him, saying he was at Oxford and wants to work as a clerk, which disappoints his father, who tells him that noblemen don't work for others and that he should manage the family hotel. The son expresses his reluctance to be a nobleman, accusing them of being servants to the English. The palace's Aga, sitting next to the grandmother, tells her that the mother is organizing her daughter's debut to select a nobleman for her. He suggests that he could talk to the mother about the young nobleman, but the grandmother tells him that it is for the young man to decide if he wants to go or not. She asks him to invite the mother to a poetry she is organizing at the palace. The next day, the mother is dancing when a servant comes and tells one of the mother's assistants that an English officer wants to speak with her. Upon hearing this, the mother asks them to let him in. Meanwhile, a woman is sitting with the English officer, trying to seduce him. The English officer enters the room where the mother is and introduces himself as the new inspector. He tells her that he wants to host a party at his home and requests her permission for the girls to sing and dance at his party. The mother laughs and refuses to talk to him. One of her assistants tells him that agreeing to his request would make Shahi Mahal lose its exclusivity. However, the officer offers her a lot of money to agree. This time, the mother collapses with laughter and tells her assistant that even the least of her girls would refuse to dance for his money and asks him to leave. The officer feels insulted and takes it personally. At night, we see the palace manager visiting an English officer, Cartwright, at his home, asking him to share all the news about the mother and her weaknesses. At the same time, the mother is preparing for a poetry event organized by her friend and asks her daughter to come along. However, the daughter pretends to be sick and refuses. The mother tells her it's a poetry party and that her favorite poet, Niazi, will be there. This changes the daughter's mind. She asks to go with her mother, but the mother refuses and leaves without her. Undeterred, the daughter decides to sneak out to the party via the servant's entrance and unknowingly gets into her mother's car. At the party, the daughter stands afar, listening to Niazi's poetry, and writes down the verses in her notebook. By chance, a young nobleman, Taj, spots her from a distance and is instantly smitten. He approaches her and holds her hand to steady her notebook, allowing her to write the poetry. However, Taj is called away as he is the star of the event. When he returns, he finds that the daughter has disappeared. He searches everywhere for her, but his grandmother stops him to introduce him to the mother and mentions that she suggested he become her daughter's lover. Taj refuses and mocks the idea of courtesans, upsetting the mother, who accuses him of disrespect and leaves the party. Meanwhile, the daughter is hiding in the back of the car unnoticed. When they arrive at the palace, the mother pretends to get out of the car to give the daughter a chance to get out without suspicion. Indeed, the daughter gets out and finds her mother waiting. The driver, Iqbal, tries to explain that he did not know she was in the car with him. The mother refuses to listen. Later, see the servant, Saima, going to Iqbal and telling him that dinner is ready, but finds him upset because the mother is angry with him. Saima tries to comfort him. It is revealed that Saima and Iqbal are in love. The next day, the daughter is walking with her cousin Shama, and they talk about the poetry evening. Shama is surprised that the mother did not punish her for going to the party behind her back. Suddenly, they find the palace servants carrying the daughter's poetry books. An assistant to the mother tells her that this is her punishment for attending the poetry event behind her mother's back. The daughter rushes to her mother, who is burning the notebook in which she wrote her poems. When the daughter objects, the mother reminds her that her fate is to be a courtesan. At the same time, Bebo is with Wali. The daughter goes to them and complains to Bebo that her mother burned all her books. Bebo promises to replace them and decides to comfort the daughter, but when she goes to find her, she is not there. Wali tells her that he must leave to meet a police superintendent named Henderson. Bebo learns from him that Henderson has decided to fire at the protesters. Later, the daughter and Bebo go out to buy new books. However, The streets are filled with demonstrations. The daughter is impressed by them because they are demanding freedom, rejecting injustice. In the bookstore, Bebo lets the daughter choose the books she wants and approaches the bookstore owner, Nawaz, requesting a book she had given him earlier, saying she would take it to Mr. Hamid. She informs him that Henderson intends to use violence against the protesters. Bebo then lies to the daughter, telling her she is going to meet someone named Sultana and leaves her alone. Meanwhile, the daughter coincidentally meets Taj in the bookstore. She mistakes him for Nawaz's assistant and initially refuses his help. However, Taj begins to recite poetry to her. She responds with verses from her favorite poet. At the same time, Bebo reaches Hamid, who is the leader of the popular resistance. She informs him that Henderson will shoot at them during the march and hands him the book she was carrying. However, Hamid tells her there's no time for reading. She opens the book, revealing a hidden gun, and tells him they must defend themselves. She explains that if the English manage to kill any of them, they can use the gun to kill 6 Englishmen in return. We learn that Bebo is secretly a member of the resistance, pretending to be Wali's courtesan to gather information and relay it to the resistance. Returning to the daughter, we see her gathering all the books she wants. Taj insists on paying for her, but she refuses and leaves the bookstore. Outside, she is shocked to see Henderson and the police beating the protesters. Taj quickly leaves the bookstore to protect the daughter and tries to defend the vulnerable protesters from the soldiers. One of the soldiers confronts him with a gun, and Taj thinks he is about to die. The daughter watches from a distance, but Hamid arrives just in time to kill the soldier. When Taj looks around, he doesn't find the daughter, but finds her handkerchief left behind. We return to the past, where we see Rehana sleeping and the queen massaging her feet. Rehana expresses her disdain for the queen, wondering how she could sell her child and still live with herself, unbroken. She also mocks the queen for failing to please her lover and scoffs at her aspirations to be Zulfikar's courtesan. Rehana tells her she will never be able to take her place. The queen, visibly upset by Rehana's words, coolly responds that she has been with Zulfikar for a while. Rehana realizes that the child she sold is Zulfikar's son, and thus tells the queen she will turn her from a courtesan into a prostitute by bringing many men to her. She taunts the queen about whether she can handle it. Suddenly, the queen explodes in anger, attacking Rehana and attempting to suffocate her with a pillow. Shortly after, Zulfikar enters and sees Rehana breathing her last breaths. The queen tells him that she killed her sister before she could kill her and asks for his help to dispose of the body. However, the queen comes up with a better idea and decides to tie Rehana to the largest chandelier in the palace. She tells Zulfikar to leave before anyone sees him and says that she will handle the situation. Unbeknownst to the queen, Wahida and Rehana's daughter Farida are watching her. Meanwhile, the queen falls to the ground, crying and screaming that her sister Rehana hung herself. Later, we see the queen at the police station, insisting that she did nothing wrong and that her sister Rehana killed herself. Suddenly, Zulfikar arrives, pulling out money and bribing the officer to release the queen. However, the officer explains that he has a file full of evidence showing that he and the queen were the ones who killed Rehana. He points out that there was no chair in the place for Rehana to stand on to hang herself, in addition to their fingerprints on the body. Nonetheless, Zulfikar confidently continues to offer money until the officer agrees to hand over the case file and release the queen. Zulfikar takes the file and hands it to the queen, telling her that she is innocent. In the present, soldiers enforce a curfew in the city, beating anyone they find on the streets and cutting off the city's electricity. At the same time, it is the anniversary of Rehana's death. Queen takes all the girls to Rehana's room in the dormitory to pray and offer blessings for her. The daughter asks Bebo if their aunt Rehana's spirit really resides in the dormitory. Bebo explains that nobleman Sami gifted the dormitory to Rehana because he loved her, and that Rehana's spirit is captive of love, not the dormitory. After they pray, and the queen instead curses her, the queen sends the girls away. Wahida approaches her and asks for the key to the dormitory that the queen had promised her. The queen refuses, explaining that nobleman Sami's widow wants it and has filed a lawsuit. She promises to give it to Wahida if they win the case. Wahida is skeptical of the queen's promises, having been let down many times before, and loudly insists that she will take the key from her and become the lady of the palace. Meanwhile, the servants sitting in the kitchen overhear their argument. They are surprised that the queen and Wahida are fighting over something that isn't theirs because the dormitory belongs to Farida, Rehana's daughter, whom the queen sold as a child when she was only 9 years old. Afterward, Bebo goes to sit with Laho, who continues to lie to Bebo, claiming that Zorawar bought her the sari she is wearing as a gift, along with an emerald ring, and even exaggeratedly claims that he bought her a plane. However, Bebo yells at her to wake up and reminds her that the sari and the ring were actually gifts from the queen. Bebo also informs her that Zorawar hasn't visited her for a while and has met someone from the nobility whom he plans to marry. Laho refuses to face the truth and leaves Bebo to meet Zorawar, but she is drunk. As soon as she steps out of the room, she falls to the ground, unable to walk straight. At the same time, Sayima is at a perfume shop requesting the scent that the queen always likes to wear. Meanwhile, Taj visits the same perfume shop with his assistant Balraj. He asks the shop owner to identify the fragrance on a handkerchief belonging to the daughter and inquires if he knows the handkerchief's owner. However, the shopkeeper tells him that all the girls in Lahore use the same perfume, which frustrates Taj, causing him to leave the handkerchief behind when he leaves. Sayima picks it up and returns it to the daughter, telling her that her lover was looking for her. Surprised, the daughter notices the letter T written next to the first letter of her name on the handkerchief and guesses until she figures out that his name is Taj. Simultaneously, Wahida is in the room with her daughter Shama, doing everything possible to hide her feminine features. Wahida, envious of Shama's youth and beauty, even asks her to call her sister instead of mother, but Shama refuses and rebukes her for being jealous, insisting that she is her mother, not her sister. Wahida slaps her, but Bebo witnesses this, scolds Wahida, advising her to be closer to her only daughter. Later, we see Layo at a bar with Zorawar, where she indeed finds him with his new girlfriend, and they are planning their marriage. Still believing Zorawar will marry her too, Layo tells him he will be the first nobleman to marry 2 women and excitedly prepares herself for the wedding. She reassures his girlfriend that she will wear a different sari than hers. However, Zorawar humors Layo till he finally expels her from the bar and locks the door. Afterward, Queen selects jewelry for the daughter to wear at her debut. However, the jeweler informs her that Zorawar has taken one of the diamonds for his future wife. Bebo is shocked to hear this, but Layo tells her that she will be the one dancing at his wedding and will dazzle everyone so much that Zorawar's father will propose marriage to her on his son's behalf. Then comes Zorawar's wedding party. Layo attends, wearing a bridal veil, but Zorawar throws money at her to start dancing. Layo dances deliberately, trying to get close and flirt with Zorawar, but he is annoyed by her and hits her in front of everyone. Unfortunately for him, the queen is there and apologizes because Layo overstepped her boundaries with him and fell in love. However, she asks him to apologize too for his arrogance and rude behavior towards Layo. Upon hearing this, Zorawar becomes upset and shouts, telling her that it's an honor for a courtesan like her to be treated harshly by him. This is the last straw for the queen, who decides to shock Zorawar by challenging his proud lineage. She reveals that he is the illegitimate son of a courtesan named the Queen. Zorawar collapses and asks for proof that he is indeed her son, but she tells him to ask his father instead. She admits that she has been upset for 26 years since he was taken from her, that she will remain upset for having a son like him. She then asks Laho to give him one last look before they leave, but Laho refuses and walks away without looking back. On the way, Laho is devastated by what happened and drinks excessively. However, her heart cannot handle what Zorawar did to her. She dies instantly. Back home, the girls prepare Laho for burial. The queen sees this as the price of love. She asks the girls to sing as they bid her farewell because courtesans are only freed in death. At the funeral, the queen is shocked to see Farida, Rehana's daughter, who has grown up to be a spitting image of her mother. Farida has come to tell the queen that she will reclaim all her mother's possessions that were taken from her. She starts with the ring the queen is wearing, leaves after threatening her with the same fate as her mother. We then return to the past and see the queen with Zulfikar. However, Wahida interrupts them, demanding that the queen sign the papers for the dormitory. She tells the queen that Rehana left 2 palaces, and just as she took Shahi Mahal, she wants the dormitory. She threatens to testify against them for killing Rehana because she saw her and Zulfikar doing it. Zulfikar gets angry, slashes her face with the pen that the queen was supposed to use to sign the papers, and warns her never to mention Rehana again. Returning to the present, we see the queen waiting for Wahida, who has agreed to testify in court that the dormitory belongs to Rehana and that nobleman Sami gifted it to her before she died. Wahida agrees to testify only if the queen gives her the keys to the dormitory. The queen promises her that. In court, the queen manipulates the proceedings and refuses to answer questions straightforwardly. She also pretends to be ill, seeks to postpone the session. However, when all her plans fail, she decides to question the lineage of the nobleman Sami's son. Upon hearing this, he becomes enraged and attacks the queen, attempting to strangle her. Farida, who is in the courtroom, witnesses all of this. Afterward, we see Wahida holding the keys to the dormitory after the court awards them the property. She is overjoyed at finally becoming the lady of the palace. However, she is surprised when the queen takes the keys from her and hands them to Sami's widow, telling her that she has kept her promise and given her the keys for a full day. After Sami's widow leaves, Wahida breaks down in tears. The queen tries to explain to her that the dormitory isn't theirs. It belongs to Farida, who has returned and is determined to take revenge on them. The queen reveals that she gave the dormitory to Sami's widow because she is the only one who can stand against Farida in court. However, Wahida remains unconvinced by her words and questions why she always ends up the loser. Later, the queen sits among the girls and hears a beautiful voice singing. She thinks it's her daughter Alm's voice, but the girls tell her it's actually Saima's, which irritates the queen that the servant has a better voice than her daughter. Suddenly, Wahida enters with sweets, telling the queen that their new neighbor sent them. She asks the queen to greet her. The queen thinks she's talking about Sami's widow and gets up to greet her, but Wahida slyly informs her that their new neighbor is Farida. Wahida is pleased because the queen has unwittingly brought her enemy into her own home. Meanwhile, the palace master quickly switches allegiances and goes to Farida with flowers, deciding to ally with her. He informs her that Alm doesn't want to be a courtesan, but wants to be a poet. He also tells her about the queen's animosity with Cartwright, the police inspector. That night, Farida is with her lover, Chowdhury. We learn that he bought her the dormitory from Sami's widow. While Alm is at the library asking Taj, learns that he is a nobleman. Taj is listening to Hamid's speech, decides to join the popular resistance. Farida then goes to Alm and tells her that the queen wants Alm to be a courtesan for Taj, suggesting that she could take him for herself and get revenge. However, Farida refuses, stating she wants Wali, Bebo's lover. Later, Alm is with Bebo in her room, asking her to attend a party hosted by Wali, hoping Taj will be there. At the party, Farida is present and begins her plan by approaching Wali and telling Bebo she intends to take him from her. Then she sits next to Alm, who is looking for Taj, and learns from her that she loves him. Farida advises her to go to the shrine and pray that God will make him hers, telling her that when she opens her eyes, she will find him in front of her. Farida then goes to Taj and tells him she is a seer, informing him that he will meet his lover at the shrine in Hiramandi after dusk. The next day, Alm and Saima go to the shrine and Alm waits for Taj, but he doesn't show up. She asks Saima to return to the palace, and she enters the shrine to pray for the third time. At that time, Taj indeed arrives and keeps looking for her but can't find her, only finding her handkerchief. Meanwhile, Alm is with Farida, blaming her for lying to her. However, Farida makes her look out the window. She sees that Taj has indeed arrived. She rushes down to talk to him but can't reach him as he has already left. Afterward, Farida goes with the palace master to Cartwright, deciding to use the animosity between him and the queen to her advantage. She asks him to reinvestigate her mother's death case, crying to gain his sympathy, and invites him to her house to tell him everything. The news quickly reaches the queen, and Zulfikar asks her to find Rahana's case file, threatening to kill her if she doesn't produce it. Indeed, the queen and the girls start looking for the file, but Wahida tells her she burned it when asked to do so. The queen is relieved, pleased. At the same time, Farida is preparing for her debut party. However, when the queen learns of this, she complains to the head of the Hiramandi district, saying that a non-virgin courtesan shouldn't hold a debut party. Despite this, Farida insists she is still a virgin. When they want to examine her, she admits she is not, declares she will have the party regardless. Because the queen hates to be defeated, she decides that Bebo will perform her final dance at a party, which is a rule that all the noblemen must attend to bid farewell to Bebo. Indeed, Farida prepares for her debut party, but no nobleman attends her event. They apologize to the palace master, explaining they must bid farewell to Bebo. Thus, the queen wins this round of their battle. When Farida hears the news, she becomes upset and smashes a lantern in anger. The queen does not stay quiet. She goes to Farida's dormitory and mocks her. However, Farida steps on the broken glass to show her strength and her intention to take revenge. The next day, the palace master brings Wali to Farida, who is upset about what happened. Wali is ready to take her as his courtesan after Bebo's retirement party. However, Wali has one issue. Farida has a lover. Farida swears to him that Chowdhury is like a father to her, decides to get rid of him. She sends him a letter under his wife's name, claiming she is very ill. Chowdhury believes her scheme and leaves Farida to go to his wife. Meanwhile, the queen plans to sell Saima, as her voice is better than the courtesans' voices. She decides to sell her for 10,000 rupees. When Saima learns about this, she goes to Iqbal and asks him to forget her. However, Iqbal promises her that he will gather the 10,000 rupees to pay the queen to not sell her, giving her his bracelet as a token of his sincerity. The next day, the queen is giving advice to the courtesans, but Saima interrupts her, tells her that she loves Iqbal. She asks the queen to give him a chance to gather the 10,000 rupees. The queen agrees and gives him 15 days. Because time is short, Iqbal decides to gather the money through gambling. He successfully raises the amount and Saima takes it to the queen. However, the queen suspects that he stole it from her, but Saima informs her that he won it in gambling. At the same time, Shama is standing with nobleman Firuz, who continues to flirt with her. However, Shama reminds him that he was her mother's lover. Meanwhile, Wahida sees them from the window and breaks down, deciding to end her life, but Bebo stops her. Queen hears Bebo's scream, goes to ask what is happening. Wahida tells her that Shama has stolen Firuz from her. The queen then decides that Firuz will be Shama's lover. Feeling betrayed by everyone, Wahida threatens the queen that she will kill herself, but the queen dismisses her and coldly suggests that she do it properly rather than leaving marks on her body for nothing. The next day, Taj meets Hamed to officially join the resistance. However, Hamed asks him not to wear English clothes again and gives him pamphlets to distribute. By chance, Taj meets Alm in the market while distributing the pamphlets and gives her part of them to help him. Afterward, Alm goes to tell Farida that she saw Taj and confesses that she couldn't reveal her feelings to him. Farida suggests that Alm write a letter expressing her emotions, promising to deliver it to Taj herself. That night, Alm is writing the letter, but Bebo sees her and decides that she will be the one to deliver the letter to Taj. At the same time, Cartwright is talking with Henderson, telling him that he can't find Rahana's case file. Henderson advises him to stay away from Farida, explaining to Cartwright that the Curtisons are the ones controlling the noble. Henderson thinks the noblemen are merely servants to them, gives Cartwright photos of the resistance organizers to look for, including a photo of Bebo. The next day, Bebo decides to go to the resistance headquarters to meet Taj and give him the letter. However, she realizes that a spy is following her, so she changes her route and goes to Nawaz at the bookstore, asking him to deliver the letter to Taj. Meanwhile, Cartwright visits Farida and tells her that he can't find the case file, but she tells him she has a witness in the case, referring to Wahida, who appears before Cartwright and refuses to speak. After Cartwright leaves, Farida asks Wahida why she didn't speak, but Wahida tells her she will testify with her if she gives her the keys to the dormitory. That night, Hamed learns that Henderson is throwing a party at Ashfaq's hotel, so they decide to book a venue there and recite revolutionary poetry. Bebo decides to get close to Henderson and become his courtesan to gather information for them. During the party, Bebo takes advantage of Henderson being in the bathroom and enters after him, pretending it was a mistake, that she didn't know it was a men's bathroom. Bebo continues to seduce him to attract his interest. At the same time, Iqbal is gambling to gather the rest of the money to give to the queen. However, he is surprised when the police come to arrest him specifically for gambling. Iqbal is puzzled and tells them that everyone present is gambling. They insist on taking him. He tries to escape, but eventually reaches Saima and hands her all the money he has, asking her to give it to the queen. However, the queen's assistants prevent her from taking the money, telling her it's stolen and that accepting it would make her an accomplice. They force her to enter the palace. When Alm learns about Iqbal's arrest, she asks the queen to release him from jail, but the queen bargains with her over her debut party. Alm agrees for Saima's happiness. Meanwhile, Cartwright tries to make Iqbal reveal the queen's secrets, but he refuses. Therefore, Cartwright tells him that it was the queen who reported him and asks him to accuse her of being against the English. Despite the beatings, Iqbal refuses to speak against the queen, affirming his loyalty to her. The next day, Bebo enters where Alm is, brings her a letter from Taj. She is surprised to see that Alm is wearing ankle bells, understanding that Alm has decided to give up her dream and become a courtesan. She asks Alm to give herself a chance and reads Taj's letter, which asks for a meeting. Indeed, Alm decides to meet him, but Taj is unable to because he has to participate in a new march. Therefore, Alm leaves a letter for him at the planned meeting place and walks away. At the palace, the queen takes advantage of Iqbal being in jail and decides to turn him from a servant in the palace to a prostitute. When the queen's assistants hear this, they give her all the gold they could gather and ask her to take it and escape. However, Saima refuses to leave, saying she won't abandon Alm because she sacrificed her love for her. On the day Alm is preparing for her debut party, Saima is ready to give herself to another man instead of Iqbal. Then we see Farida writing a love letter and asking her servant to deliver it to Alm. As soon as Alm reads the letter, she decides to escape from her debut party. At the same time, Bebo goes to the queen and informs her that Alm has disappeared. The queen is forced to apologize to the nobleman, explaining that Alm is ill. Thus, Farida triumphs over the queen, compensating for what happened to her on the day of her debut. Shortly after, Alm reaches Taj's house, and he is surprised to see her. Alm hands him the letter he supposedly sent her, but Taj tells her that he did not write the letter. Alm explains that she escaped from her debut party and asks him not to joke with her. Taj is shocked to learn that Alm is considered a courtesan and tries to understand that she is not one and refuses to be one. However, Taj tells her that even if she isn't one of them, being raised among them is enough. He asks her to return to where she came from. He blames himself for not having asked about her name and occupation earlier. He leaves her and enters his palace, closing the door in her face. At the same time, Farida is pleased with her victory over the queen and decides to throw a party like the English do. She tells the palace master that the noblemen and the English will dance with the courtesans. The palace master is surprised and tells her it's against the courtesans' rules, but Farida argues that courtesans need to evolve to avoid extinction. Indeed, Farida goes to dance among the noblemen and the English, who join her in dancing and drinking. Meanwhile, Alm sits in front of Taj's house, unsure where to go. Taj comes to her with his car and asks her to get in so he can take her back to Hiramandi. Alm refuses, stating she will not return to that place. Realizing her determination, Taj takes her to his home instead and tells her she can sleep there for the night and leave the next day. He asks her to lie if anyone asks who she is and say she is the sister of his friend Sarfraz. Alm asks for the name of his friend's sister and learns it is Alm. The next morning, Taj wakes up to the sound of his grandmother Kuzia laughing with Alm. He rushes down and is surprised, but Kuzia tells him she saw Alm trying to leave and stopped her. She tells him they were walking and that she has grown very fond of Alm, unlike Ashfaq, who is displeased upon seeing Alm. Later, Alm goes to Taj in the library to ask for paper and a pen because she loves to write poetry. However, Taj is more focused on her closeness to Kuzia. He reminds her that she will have to leave and that Kuzia will be upset if she gets too attached. He tells her his father is asking when her brother will come to take her, planning to hire someone to pretend to be her brother. Alm asks if he thought about where she would go after leaving his place and insists she will never return to Hiramandi. That night, Bebo and Wahida head to a party at Ashfaq's hotel. Wahida is excited because she will be Henderson's courtesan. At the party, Wahida sings and dances enthusiastically. Meanwhile, Bebo manages to seduce Henderson for the second time and takes him away from the crowd. When Wahida realizes Bebo has tricked her, she follows and shouts at her. Bebo enters the room with Henderson and locks the door in Wahida's face. Wahida argues with Ashfaq to open the door. Meanwhile, Taj, sitting with Balraj, watches Wahida's behavior. Balraj asks Taj not to send Alm back to Hiramandi again, noting she ran away because of him. Indeed, Taj goes straight to the palace and tells Alm that her brother will be delayed for a month and won't be able to come to get her. Alm asks him to make it 2 months. Meanwhile, Wahida decides to leave the queen and goes to Farida. She asks Farida to join forces to destroy the queen, reminding her that the queen took Firuz from her and gave him to Shama, and Bebo took Henderson from her. She also reminds Farida that the queen killed her mother, Rahana. However, Farida refuses to let her stay in the dormitory and asks her to return to the queen. Surprisingly, Wahida reveals that she has the case file of her mother that they were looking for and refuses to give it to Farida, leaving without handing it over. When we return to Alm, we find her in Taj's room telling him that she will go shopping with Kutsia for the holiday and asks him to join them. Taj refuses and tells her that the driver will take them. Alm approaches him and asks why he seems upset with her. Taj clarifies that he is not upset with her, but rather with the place she comes from. Later, Alm and Kutsia go to the market, but the palace master sees her by chance. After returning from the market, Ashfaq asks Alm for her brother's address, telling her he will send a letter to his boss to give him leave to spend the holiday with them. Suddenly, Taj enters, visibly beaten, and Ashfaq understands that he was involved in a protest. Ashfaq is displeased and tells him that the protesters will ruin their lives. Taj doesn't listen and leaves, going up to his room with Alm following him. Ashfaq doesn't know what to do with his son. Kutsia advises him to speak to Alm's brother and ask for her hand in marriage for Taj. We then see Wahida at the Queen's, suggesting that her daughter Shama organize the performances in Alm's place until she returns. Queen refuses, stating that they will not perform until her daughter returns. Here, the palace master gets encouraged and asks the Queen for money in exchange for telling her Alm's location, informing her that she is at Ashfaq's house. On the holiday, Kutsia throws a celebration at the palace. Queen enters, blaming Kutsia for not inviting her and pretending it's her first time seeing Alm. Ashfaq tells her that her brother is a high-ranking government official. The Queen mocks his words. Ashfaq senses something is wrong. Here, Taj decides to speak before the Queen can say anything. He confesses to his father that Alm is the Queen's daughter and not a courtesan, that he loves her, wants to marry her. When Kutsia hears this, she is upset because Taj lied to her, but he defends himself, explaining that love takes time to confess. The Queen interrupts and agrees to give him a chance to confess his love, challenging him to manage to marry Alm. She then leaves them alone and walks away. The next day, the Queen packs her suitcase to travel with Zulfikar, hoping that Wahida has hopes that she will leave her the keys to the Shahi Mahal palace. However, the Queen gives the keys to Bebo, leaving Wahida feeling worthless. Afterward, we see Taj taking Alm to a house he inherited from his mother in the countryside. He tells his uncle that Alm will stay with him, but his uncle refuses, stating that a woman who stays in a house with a man without being married, is a courtesan and threatens to leave if she enters the house. However, Taj dismisses his concerns and tells him that he can leave if he wants to. At night, Wahida takes advantage of the queen's absence and goes digging in the garden, unearthing the case file of Rehana. However, she's surprised to see Bebo meeting someone at the gate of the palace and giving him money and jewels. Wahida realizes Bebo is stealing from her mother and supporting the resistance. She decides to confront her, but Bebo explains that she is doing it for a noble cause and offers Wahida the keys to the palace if she wants them. Wahida refuses and takes the file to Farida, who is surprised that Wahida had hidden the file all this time without using it. Wahida tells her that the queen had promised her the dormitory and that she had always wanted to be the lady of the palace. She tells Farida that now she only cares about destroying the queen and suggests they take the file to Cartwright. Meanwhile, Alm is with Taj at his mango farms, playing on a swing like a young girl, which endears her further to it. Suddenly, it starts raining, and Taj is worried about Alm, but she is thrilled by the rain, continues to swing joyfully. That night, Alm refuses to come down for dinner. When Taj learns that she is unwell, he quickly goes up to check on her. The next morning, Taj wakes up in Alm's bed, extremely happy, and traditionally writes the letter T on Alm's handkerchief before leaving. At the same time, Farida and Wahida are ready to take the file to Cartwright, but the palace master meets them and tells them that he has traveled to another city for 15 days. When Wahida hears this, she is frustrated and tells Farida that this delay will allow the queen to turn things in her favor. However, Farida calms her down, reminding her that she waited 15 years and can wait another 15 days. Meanwhile, the queen is with Zulfikar, who has managed to find out Farida's entire history. He tells her that the man Farida married when she was 12 years old and that her husband died 2 years later from poisoning, suggesting that she poisoned him. He also reveals that at 16 she was sold to a brothel, which she burned down and escaped with her lover. He explains that she was once a servant at Chaudhry's house before managing to become his courtesan. He informs her that Farida has many cases against her in various countries and that she is not an easy woman to deal with. Surprisingly, after hearing all this, the queen is upset that none of her own daughters turned out like Farida, who at the moment is in the dormitory, bringing a photographer to take her pictures and hanging them all over the dormitory. However, the queen confronts her with her childhood pictures, and Farida is shocked to see that the queen has the case file of Rehana. Thus, the queen manages to exchange the important papers in the file for the photos she has of Farida. As soon as Wahida learns that Farida has also betrayed her, she is devastated and burns the rest of the papers. At the same time, the queen decides that Shama will perform shows at the palace. Suddenly, Wahida enters in distress, asking the queen to speak with her. However, the queen expresses her disdain for seeing Wahida's face, leading Wahida to turn her back and confess that she was wrong to think of aligning with Farida against the queen. The queen forgives her, but starts to treat her worse than before, intentionally degrading her dignity. The next day, Shama is at the market when Firuz, distressed because she has been avoiding him, approaches her. Wahida explains to Firuz that Shama has now become the main performer after Bebo retired and Alam fled. Firuz becomes angry, reminding them that both were once his courtesans. Wahida scolds him in front of the entire market, walks away with her daughter. At night, the queen's assistant is surprised to find Iqbal standing in the rain, learns he has been released from prison. She immediately lets him in and provides him with food. However, Iqbal is shocked to learn from the queen that Saima had fled on the same day he was imprisoned. The next day, Bebo is at Henderson's office when one of his men enters and informs him that the arms shipment he had ordered has arrived. Henderson orders it to be stored in the camp warehouses. Bebo pays close attention to the conversation and the camp map. Later, Taj proposes to Alam, but she tells him that she can't cook and can only offer him poetry. Taj agrees, delighting Alam, who embraces him happily. At night, Bebo meets with the resistance and shares everything she learned about Henderson, including a map of the camp. She informs them that the guards will change shifts at the warehouses and they only have 5 minutes to steal the weapons and escape. Taj decides to marry Alam on the same day as the resistance operation so that the English won't suspect him. He plans to discreetly leave the celebration with Balraj. At the party, Farida attends and reproaches Taj for not inviting her, even though she was instrumental in his closeness to Alam. She inquires about Alam and Taj tells her that she is in her room. Farida goes looking for Alam, but accidentally enters Taj's office and discovers his involvement with the resistance. Meanwhile, the resistance members manage to enter the English armory and gather all the necessary weapons. However, As they attempt to exit, they find that Bashir, one of their own, has locked them in to betray them to the English. They decide to escape through another door in the warehouse. Guards arrive and attack. They manage to wound Hamid. Later, Cartwright meets with Farida, telling her that he must leave, and informs her that the resistance has stormed the weapons warehouse. Farida reveals that she knows who was behind the action. Shortly after, Alam is in her room packing up her belongings, preparing to marry Taj and travel with him. Suddenly, she hears a noise and thinks that Taj has returned, but she is shocked to find soldiers storming the house to search it. She quickly runs to Taj's room, trying to remove any evidence of his involvement with the resistance. Flees. Unfortunately, Cartwright catches her as she is escaping. Meanwhile, Taj is still with the resistance members, suspecting a traitor among them. Suddenly, Bal Raj enters and informs them that the police have raided the house and captured Alam. Upon hearing this, Taj is devastated and wants to go to her, but Hamid stops him, asking him to sacrifice his love for the sake of the nation. Indeed, Taj follows Hamid's advice, goes to the station with his father, Ashfaq, who tells Cartwright that his son has nothing to do with any wrongdoing. However, Cartwright decides to confront Taj with Alam, deliberately beating and humiliating her in front of him to force a confession. But Alam insists that Taj has no ties to the resistance, and Taj confirms her statement. Afterward, Alam is returned to the cell, but this time she throws away the handkerchief marked with the initial of Taj's name and her own into the fire. When the queen learns that Alam is in jail, she decides to bribe Cartwright to release her daughter. However, he is with Faridan, presenting her with a gift dress. When Faridan inquires about the reason for the gift, he reveals that he imprisoned Alam because of the evidence Faridan provided, but she tells him that her gift would be breaking the queen's pride and requests that the queen be arrested instead of Alam. Later that night, the queen waits at the police station for 4 hours before Cartwright allows her in. She offers him a bribe to free Alam, but Cartwright ignores it and demands that she sing and dance for him. He throws money at her, and after she finishes singing, he demands that she undress and dance for him. The queen refuses and questions if he knows who he is talking to. Cartwright then hits her, declaring her the Queen of Lahore, and orders his men to take her away, implying they intend to rape her. Realizing this, the queen decides to surrender herself willingly in exchange for Alam's release. Cartwright later goes to Faridan, who is upset because he released Alam quickly without breaking the queen's spirit. However, Cartwright informs her that he and his men raped her. Distraught by the news, Faridan breaks down, regretting her request, and asks Cartwright to leave, lamenting that no woman would rejoice at another's misfortune. At the same time, the queen is devastated by what happened to her and tells Alam that she took the love and paid the price. Afterward, Alam goes to her room, saddened by what happened to her mother, but Bibu comforts her, telling her that Cartwright is to blame, not her. She asks if Alam blames Taj, but Alam tells her she is proud of Taj because he chose the country and reveals that she is pregnant by him. Bibu is happy and suggests telling Taj, but Alam has decided to become a concubine as her mother wished. The next day, Bibu goes to check on Hamid. Taj sees her and asks about Alam. Bibu tells him that Alam has become a disreputable concubine because of him. Taj tries to defend himself, saying Hamid didn't want their mission compromised, but Bibu is not convinced by his excuse and questions if he consulted Hamid before falling in love with Alam and sleeping with her. She informs him that Alam is pregnant. Immediately, Taj goes to Ashfaq to announce his intent to marry and asks Qudsiya to accompany him to propose to Alam from the queen. Indeed, Qudsiya accompanies him, bringing gifts, and asks the queen for her daughter's hand, apologizing for Taj's actions. However, the queen is unaccepting of the apology and demands that she kneel before her. Taj feels insulted by the queen's treatment of his grandmother, but Qudsiya silences him and tells the queen that she came to request Alam's hand, not to beg. She reminds the queen that Taj and Alam love each other and asks for a chance for them. The queen agrees to give them a chance, but sets a condition. If Taj is late by 10:30, Alam must perform her first dance in front of the nobles. At the same time, Ustad enters the servants' room with a record featuring an image of Saima, telling them she has become a famous singer. Iqbal is happy and asks for her location, but Ustad shocks him by revealing that Saima is married to a wealthy man. Ustad decides to disclose a secret he has kept hidden. Saima didn't escape as the queen had told him. He reveals that the queen reported him and sold Saima to 2 men the same day he was imprisoned. Iqbal is devastated, throws the record into the fire, and leaves. That night, everyone at Shahi Mahal is preparing for Alam's wedding. Qudsiya is sewing Taj's wedding crown and asks Ashfaq to attend their son's wedding. She tells him that his absence won't change anything. However, Ashfaq goes to his office and calls Cartwright, reporting that Taj is part of the resistance. Minutes later, Cartwright raids the palace and arrests Taj on charges of rebellion. Qudsiya can't believe that Ashfaq did this to prevent Taj from marrying Alam. After the clock passes 10:30, the queen goes to Alam, tells her to prepare for her performance. This sequence of events leads to an intense climax where personal and political conflicts collide, dramatically affecting the lives of all involved. At night, Ustad is with the queen, trying to convince her to speak with Zulfikar to persuade the nobles to return and patronize them again. However, the queen refuses, stating they won't starve without them. Wahida sees this as an opportunity to become the lady of the palace. Therefore, the queen goes to Nasreen, Zulfikar's wife, and asks her to convince Zulfikar to bring the nobles back to the palace and to have mercy on the concubines. Nasreen reminds her that none of the concubines had pity on the wives when they were taking their husbands and asks her to leave. The queen returns to the palace and gathers all the concubines and prostitutes in Hira Mandi. Frieden tells them that the men have abandoned them and that the nation will never forsake them. She asks them to serve the nation. Bibu then stands up and manages to inspire them to join the resistance, telling them that they are the ones who can truly understand what the country is going through. At night, Hamed gathers the resistance members and they decide to eliminate Henderson. Bibu volunteers to sacrifice herself for the cause. Then Bibu goes to the conference Henderson is hosting, where he boasts about the achievements the British have brought to India. Suddenly, Bibu stands up, pulls out a pistol, and manages to assassinate Henderson, but gets captured. Hamed is with her, trying to protect her, but is shot and dies. The guards capture Bibu. Ustad immediately goes to the palace to inform the queen that Bibu has been imprisoned for killing Henderson. The queen is thrilled and proud of her daughter. Prison. Cartwright tortures Bibu to make her betray her comrades, but she only repeats the word freedom. Back at the palace, Frieden informs everyone that the British will execute Bibu the next day. They all decide to stand by her despite the curfew. That night, Ustad goes to Alam and tells her that Cartwright wants to buy her for one night, believing she is the only suitable person for this task. Alam rebukes him, reminding him that Cartwright raped her mother, killed her lover, and is about to execute her sister. Ustad thinks this makes her the most suitable person for revenge, reveals a pistol hidden in his clothes, suggesting this is her chance for retribution. The next day, as the officer enters Bibu's cell to take her to her execution, she is prepared and sings freedom songs. At the same time, all the women in Hira Mandi gather, singing the same song. They decide to defy the soldiers and the curfew by marching with candles and tying the anklets they used to dance with on sticks to intimidate anyone who sees them. While the prostitutes of Hira Mandi reach the place where Bibu is to be executed, Alam arrives at Cartwright's house, as she had arranged with Ustad. As the soldiers raise their rifles to carry out the execution of Bibu, Alam is ready to kill Cartwright. Before the soldiers fire at Bibu, she raises her voice, chanting for freedom. The prostitutes of Hira Mandi respond with chants of their own. Bibu dies contented, unlike Cartwright, who meets a treacherous end at the hands of Alam.